Hello guys, welcome back to Quiver Quant Daily. We have some breaking news right at the top of the show for you guys today. Trump has just announced that he is removing Kristi Noem as Department of Homeland Security Secretary. And our man of the hour that we spoke about yesterday, Senator Markwayne Mullin, he is now taking her place. So we had reports a little bit ago that he was considering firing her, basically due to how she handled herself during a congressional hearing, which we did cover over on our YouTube channel, which I do want to show you guys the clip that has been going around that got her in a little bit of hot water. So let's take a look at that.
One of those is this Safe America Media company. Where is Safe America Media headquartered?
I don't know.
I don't know either, Madam Secretary. We can't find it. We can't find a website. We did find an address that's registered for this company. Do you know where that address is?
Is there a problem with this contract?
I'll tell you about it.
According to
Madam
law,
Secretary, the
address
is registered to a political operative. Madam Secretary, the company, and then I'll give you an opportunity to respond. The company is registered to a political operative in Virginia. Do you know, just by way of example, whether this company that received $143 million in taxpayer dollars, has it ever done work for the government before?
I don't know. I can't.
The answer is it has not. And do you know why we know that? Because it was incorporated 8 days before this contract went out. You want the American people to believe that this is all above board?
Yes,
that $143 million of taxpayer money just happened to go to this one company that doesn't have a headquarters, doesn't have a website, has never done work for the federal government before, and is registered, apparently, or attached to a residence from a political operative. And of course, one of the subcontractors of that contract, as you know, is a political firm that's tied to you back when you were governor of South Dakota. The reason why I ask these questions is that this is taxpayer money. And I presume, I don't know this for a fact, but Senator Tillis noted yesterday the way in which your agency is blocking the Inspector General from 11 different investigations that it is trying to conduct. I don't know if this happens to be one of them. I certainly hope it is, because eventually the facts will become public in this regard.
So yeah, she basically got lit up in public. Trump was not happy about that one and appointed Markwayne Mullin. We talked about him yesterday. You know, he's violated the Stock Act before, and he's kind of back to his old ways. Like we covered yesterday, he purchased Carpenter Technologies again back on, I think it was February 4th. Yeah, February 4th. Since then, Carpenter is up 17%. So he's done quite well on that little investment. I think he did, between 15 and 50,000. Carpenter is basically a global leader in specialty alloys and manufacturing. So we covered a lot of this yesterday, and now it's kind of interesting that he is our U.S. Secretary of Homeland Security. Next piece of information is I wanted to go over some trades from Representative Lisa McClain. In the last month, she's made 2 purchases of BigBear.ai. This is pretty interesting, even though the stocks are down. A lot of that has been attributed towards just the general market around AI not being too hot at the moment. But the 2 purchases that she made amounted to, at bare minimum, $16,000, probably somewhere in the middle. But I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into these 2 purchases. So the first one was between $1,000 and $15,000 on February 4th. Back on February 4th, right there, about $4.46 a share. So like I said, the purchases that she made are obviously down since then, but this was after a pretty long slide, and then she kind of got in right about this point on February 4th. She decided to double down, and not just double down with the original amount, but she decided to double down with an even bigger investment between $15,000 and $50,000 on February 6th. And the price on February 6th was even lower. It was down at $4.05. This pretty sharp decline, and then obviously she could have exited here, made a little bit of money, but we don't know exactly where she's exited, so I'm just going to assume that she's continued to hold the position since then. She decided to pick those up at pretty much some of their lowest points that they had been in the past few months. Now, I found this important because she is on the subcommittee for cyber information technologies and innovation, which is part of the House Armed Services Committee, and obviously important because one of the biggest things it covers is defense policy involving artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, cyber ops, all that good stuff. And BigBear.ai is one of those companies that is always in line for different government contracts. We did see their stock drop mainly because their earnings came out, miss a little bit, and their quarterly earnings were down. She could be telling us something about how strongly she feels about this company and its future. I would just keep an eye out for that, and we will see if this reverses and if she makes a little bit of money off this trade. Last thing I wanted to talk about today is sort of related to Bayer stock. We got some news over the last few days that Bayer had announced through Monsanto, which they own. Monsanto had announced a class settlement with some suits that they were suffering due to their manufacturing of Roundup or glyphosate. Roundup has pretty much been, I guess, proven through litigation to cause non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and they have to pay a total of $7.25 billion US. I believe they have to pay $500 million up front, and then they will have to start to pay the rest of it quarterly statements. If that is Bayer's burden now that they own Monsanto, part of where this plays into the broader political landscape is we did get a executive order from Trump. Essentially, the executive order that came down was promoting national defense by starting to manufacture these things in the United States. So right now, pretty much all of this comes from China, and we are their biggest importer of glyphosate. And if we ever get in a conflict with them, they decide to turn off the tap. Our food system is so locked in with the procurement and use of glyphosate that we would not be able to survive. Apparently, according to an interview that RFK did on the Joe Rogan show, which according to RFK, if we did switch off of glyphosate in our food system, we would see a lot of farm closures. We would see a lot of food prices go up. Basically, our system is such that we need this to survive. So pairing that with the importance that President Trump sees this, that it's important that we keep this in the United States. That has a couple ramifications. Part of what we saw is Bayer has been promoting itself as more of a regenerative company. We did see this is a pretty long scientific article. Basically what it saw was, or what was proven in the study was that glyphosate exposure into the soil kills a lot of the microbiome. So a lot of the soil health is related to or I guess the soil degrading is related to this glyphosate usage. So we see a couple discrepancies there with what Bayer is claiming. But we did see that, Bayer produces a lot of this stuff, $2.8 billion worth in U.S. glyphosate sales with global revenue of $26 billion. So they're not going to stop producing that, and clearly we are not going to stop using it. If anything, Trump is trying to make it easier for us to produce it in the United States. But one of the things that I thought was also interesting was Representative Thomas Massie, he introduced a House resolution that basically means, or what he's trying to promote is that when these companies do get sued, for causing cancer, that they are not immune to the ramifications and the settlements that they have to pay out. So this does put him again at odds with President Trump, who on the one hand is, put RFK as, the basically in charge of all of our health, but they are both in lockstep saying that we can't get rid of glyphosate. And Representative Massie is saying, well, if we're not going to get rid of it, we sure as heck aren't going to keep these companies immune. And this has a lot to do with the differences between the federal labeling for what is safe versus what the states label as safe. And part of this executive order that Trump put out is partially to protect the companies that produce it, make it easier for them to produce it here. And that is, in his mind, for national security reasons. And Thomas Massie is looking at it, I think, from the lens of, well, it might be important for national security, but it is harming people, and we want to hold them accountable. So it's a very multi-layered story, and I think it is interesting because it's something that affects everybody, regardless of political persuasion or class distinction. I mean, our food supply is really important, obviously, to everyone, and everyone is going to have differing opinions on where this goes. And I think those opinions are going to start to affect Bayer's, not just their profit margins, but possibly also their stock price. So those are the big stories for today. If you guys see anything that you think is worth us covering in the next one, please let us know. But until then, take it easy, stay safe, and we'll see you in the